We're back.
Even us. Okay.
Thank you so much. Welcome. We're so busy talking in here. Welcome to our talk studio, and we're happy to host Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru, in charge of devolution, big area, and planning as well, a massive area for Kenya. But specifically tonight, we're talking about the Uwezo Fund, which was launched this afternoon, 6 billion shillings. People are sitting down wondering, can I access this fund? And if so, what do I have to do? So just the very basics, what are the procedures?
Okay. Really, we've tried very much to make it very simple, and we're targeting the really disadvantaged group at the lowest level, at the constituency. So we are asking for someone to be a part of a group, not so much because we need them to be in a group for the sake of it, but because we are not asking for collateral. And so the group forms the collateral for us.
So there's less risk when it's a chama of sorts.
Yes. But once the money goes to the group, it can go to an individual. The only thing is that you know who to call in case the person disappears or you need the money repaid and you can't get in touch with the person who got the money. So that's that. The first thing is to have a group. It can have 5 to 15 people. That group needs to be registered. And for it to be registered, there are various mechanisms which they can use. You can register as a society, and if they decide to do that, then there is the facilitation that we're providing at the constituency level through the social development officer. And if they decide to form a company, for example, we're still providing the forms and applications and facilitating the registration process through the social development officer at the sub-county level. So anyone at the constituency level who would want to register have access right where they are. They just need to find where the sub-county office is and then look for the social development officer. The forms will be available. Okay,
so sub-county office, find yours and look for your social development officer. Those are the first steps.
Yes.
Let's talk about the allocation and distribution of the funds. I understand there's the 75% that goes across to all counties, but there's a 25% that goes to the poorest counties in Kenya, presumably to try to equalize?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason being, we wanted to apply the same principles that we used even for allocation of resources to the county governments and also for the CDF, because you recognize that there are some counties that are, or some constituencies that are more advantaged than others. And so you just want to provide that additional advantage to the poorest of the poor. And so what we've done is that 75%, just like the formula that is used for CDF, 75% goes equally, but then the 25% is given according to who has the largest proportion of the population that is very poor.
And then presumably your office will be able to monitor that, research, and take a look at the change, if any, that it makes. Let's talk about the fact that we had the Kazi kwa Vijana, which was highly unpopular. It was intended to address the need for jobs for young people, but really seemed to lock them into very low paying jobs, into poverty almost. So now we have the Uwezo Fund, but the truth is not everyone can be an entrepreneur, and the business of running business is never easy. What capacities are you creating to help train and just give additional support and information to young people who are interested in applying for these funds?
Julie, let me just say from the beginning that there's a major shift between the Uwezo Fund and the Kazi kwa Vijana. Kazi kwa Vijana focused more on consumption. All we're doing is paying people for them to be able to have a livelihood. So they were dependent on the government. On the other hand, the Uwezo Fund provides an opportunity for enterprise and innovation and business, meaning that once you have empowered them, then they become independent. And so we think that is a more sustainable route as opposed to having people who, in essence, indirectly, you're just increasing a wage bill. Now, having said that, we hope that the people who apply will be those that need it. And so what we will do is that once the groups are identified, we are providing for capacity building. You've seen, we've said about 500 million has been set aside for capacity building across the country. So it's not just being used in one place. Every region, every constituency,
every constituency,
yes, will be covered. And we advertise for farms, women's groups, youth groups that have done this kind of financing before to come forward and be identified as trainers of trainers, because they have had experiences. We've had successful table banking groups in, for example, Elgeyo Marakwet. There's one that started with 2.5 million. We hear they have over 100 million shillings now going around. We're targeting those kind of groups to use the skills that they have learned to train these new groups that are coming on board. We're also going to be supporting groups that have been existing. So it's not necessarily just the new ones. Some have been existing, they are doing pretty well, but they could do with a little bit more capital to boost their enterprise and their businesses. So the capacity building framework will be geared to the needs and the specific communities according to whatever it is that they may desire.
So very important point there, that on the ground businesses or organizations that have been doing training, there is an opportunity for you to reach out to the ministry and see if you can engage on this issue. Trainers of trainers, people at the grassroots level, can you step in? Let's talk about the fact that this is a loan. It needs to be paid back. And so often, you know, people can get, you know, the misconceived notion that, you know, this is some kind of a grant with no obligations. How do you intend to ensure that people who take this money understand there is a responsibility and an obligation to pay back, even to ensure that others get to benefit from the same funds?
One, Julie, we've just talked about the capacity building. There's going to be a lot of training before the resources are released to them. They will be made aware that there is an accountability framework in place. We have established a board at the national level. We have supported by a secretariat. And in every constituency, there is a committee. There is an Uwezo constituency committee. And their role is to identify the groups that will be beneficiary, and also beyond that, ensure that they follow up that the money is paid back. So we're not just paying and money into people's accounts while we're sitting in Nairobi and then leaving that to the individuals to just volunteer to pay back. There is a very clear mechanism of follow-up. This same committee will also ensure that their groups have been trained, that there is adequate support, and that where there is need, we're providing for coaching and mentoring from existing either groups or businesses that are already doing similar enterprises.
We have so many questions coming in, but perhaps the most common one is interest. What interest will people be paying on these loans? And you know, is it standard across the board?
We are trying as much as possible not to charge, so a minimum of 1%, I mean a maximum of 1%. So really we can say...
A maximum repayment of 1%?
Yes. And we give them a grace period of about 6 months. Yeah. So we are ensuring that the youth are actually facilitated, because we know that in the existing, from what we have received when in our consultations with various institutions, that one of the individuals and the youth and the women is the hindrance that is provided by the interest payments. And so what we wanted to do is to ensure that we lower the cost of borrowing, but then do that responsibly enough to ensure that the money actually comes back and benefits other individuals as well.
Right. 1% is low. If anyone compares that with current bank rates, they will understand what this fund is offering. But just two final questions for you. Can people build sustainable business with an interest rate of just 1%? We need it to kickstart businesses, but is it sustainable in the future if they want to grow further? And finally, what would you say to people who say this could just end up being another PR stunt? We've seen so many efforts. How do you ensure it's not?
What we're doing is that we're not giving them the money to just grow that money, is to use that money to make money and then give that money back for somebody else to do that. And what we have done is that we have tried to link them with a 30% government opportunity for those who are interested. So what would happen in our view is that you would give an amount of money, let's say 50,000, 100,000, to a certain group that will probably get a contract in government to supply water. And in doing that, in 2-3 months, or in that 6 months grace period, they should be able to pay back their 100 and be sustainable to release the 100 to go to somebody else. So in that way, you're able to actually transfer the money that you got from government, but at the same time, you've been able to build what would have ideally been built by the interest, because what we're trying to do is not run a bank. We're trying to advance capital for people to be able to do business. So that's the approach that we're using.
Finally, you confident this could transform the economy of this country?
I think so. I think so. I think 50,000 groups with about 50,000 to 100,000 in their pockets at the same time, and then having that money moving around, and if people use it and make use of it and get into business enterprises that are profitable, I think this will be have very serious